I'd like to introduce and welcome, with open hearts and minds, Will Bruder.
Here, here.
Turn the microphone.
Yeah, sure.
And then
Thanks. Thank you. Good job. Great. Good seeing you here. So, thank you all for being here.
microphone, you have to turn it on.
Oh, got to turn it on?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
in
on
my
your
pocket.
pocket,
Yeah. Okay. Microphone, switch. Okay, the switch is, it's, there it is. Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's great to be in Tucson. Lots of great things have happened here and will continue to happen here. And I have many fond memories of both my time with the guys here, as well as having had the privilege of teaching here. And it's an important place. So thank you very much for inviting me to be here this evening. And I'm briefly going to try and share how I think a little bit, some of the work that I've done. It's hard to believe, but this is the 50th year, February, since 1974 when I opened my studio. So this is sort of a 50th anniversary evening. So it's been a good journey. And this title sort of is a sort of shorthand form, but you know, it's ideas that we bring to our mind. We process it through our heart. It comes out of our hands, whether it be on a keyboard on a screen or a 4B pencil, and it evolves into architecture. We're thinking about scale, we're thinking about people, we're thinking about listening, and I want to share a few of those ideas and concepts with you, along with some of the work that's resulted from my approach over the last 50 years. So, there we go, back even farther than 50 years. This lecture is in celebration of Miss Tim, my 5th grade teacher. She challenged me to be curious. I remember that. You know, there's a handful of teachers in your life that stand out. You might know some of them already, you might not. But it's really strange that I would start a lecture here, 70 years later, by thanking Miss Tim. She was curious. I can remember standing, we were at the period where new schools were coming online, because again, I was born in 46. And so it was a brand new school. We had just moved sort of to the edge of Milwaukee. And I can remember standing at the glass windows of this very contemporary school. It was in the manner of Crow Island School. And she was helping me understand what I saw at the windows across the way. And that gets you to this evening. So, to Miss Tim. Okay, I apologize for having my back to you and the image on the left there. I'm the guy over towards the edge with a nail apron, sort of leaning over. And this is Will Bruder at Cosanti on Doubletree Ranch Road in Scottsdale. And I spent 8 months there working with Paolo Solari. Again, that was one of the great fortunes of my life. It was as he was sort of coming into being. I have the privilege of having worked on his great arcology book and worked in that studio. And I visited there yesterday, and it's amazing from those simple structures, you know, just at the beginning, what a person learned. As I mentioned, I came from Milwaukee, and as I was coming of age, this is Eero Saarinen's Milwaukee Art Museum. And so this is what I grew up with. And coincidentally, when I was working with Gunnar Burkertz, one of my early mentors as well, where my first project there was to be the lead designer on the Houston Contemporary Art Museum, which is what the maquette on the right is generating. This is a client that I've worked with for 50 years. This was an early patio. So the house on the left, this was a simple call, and you've got to sort of put yourself out there early at one level and have confidence in what you're doing. And for some strange reason, I called the local newspaper in Phoenix, where I lived for more than 50 years, and I had this first patio. And I called the editor and said, hey, are you interested in, how about take a look at it, I'll talk to you about it, let's see what happens. Well, there was a story that ran. It was a little whole budget was $10,000 with a little triangular configuration, putting together an odd-shaped backyard. And Rocky saw that article in the paper, and that became part of a lifelong friendship and a journey, and you'll see Rocky's name pop up several times this evening. But I drove up to the house on the left, and here's a visionary statement. Never met this man in my life. I walk into the backyard, and he basically looked to the back fence line at houses that look just like his across the way, and I want to screen the expletive house behind me. That's your program, okay? How do you do that? I want to make them go away. And so that resulted, after several seasons, by his own hand and skill saw and me next to him, in this odyssey that were these structures relating to this old house, this new house, I should say. And soon we had a piece of property left in the pie-shaped peeps on a cul-de-sac. And soon I came there one day after finishing the patios. He said, it's getting tough working in the lower level of my house, because he was a lettuce broker and he'd be talking loud in the morning. His family was growing, waking up. I said, I need an office. And so that office became this use, 3 foot to the lot lines. And the little building on the right, that was $250 a square foot back in the early 70s. That was not a modest budget. We put that together, and I talked to Rocky a couple weeks ago, so it's ongoing. He's in another part of the world, and we still have fond memories of that. But this is where the rootedness came. So it's always been about making, it's about tools, it's about materials, it's about understanding those things. And again, inspired by my set of mentors and things like that. Definitely, hopefully there's roots that you can discover seeing that. And then you get your first job, and you get your license, and you're ready to hang up your shingle. And I had one project. It was a $10,000 budget on a cabin that would sleep 13 people in Flagstaff, Arizona. And this is the Galloway cabin. And there you can see the evolution that happened. The whole thing was built in 4 weeks. It finished over the course of a period of time, and it was ongoing. And at that same moment that cabin is rising as one of my first projects, I had acquired 10 acres of land north of Phoenix, a place called New River. And this is my home there that was built in 4 weeks in the summer. And my studio was a small structure on the left. I lived on the section that you see the interior of. It cantilevers over the desert. It had a budget of $12,000. And a couple years later, under the rainbow, I built a studio that took a little more time and a little more energy, but not a lot. And that became home where I would work for many, many years. So then a random series of images here. Again, this is way before computers. I traveled, I looked at lots of things. You can't go and see enough examples of things you admire, and some you'll be thrilled with, some you'll be disappointed with, but it's about constantly seeing as you journey not just through your student days, but through your life. So this was for a sheet metal worker that was doing some work on my house, and one day I came to the job site, different job site, and said, my wife and I have been talking. We just got this parcel. Would you consider doing a house for us? I was flattered. It was great. It was wonderful. I got this master metal worker. I've got this man with a great appetite for making things, and he's wanting me to design a house for his family. And so these 3 foot thick stone walls that you see delineated at the perimeter of this triangle here are desert masonry that you see on the right there, in the spirit of, again, what Taliesin was all about. And he proceeded to assemble this 15,000 pound steel 3-dimensional sculpture on the ground next to it. And then it was funny because we're all ready for the lift. We're going to lift that onto the walls that had taken him the previous 9 months to make. And we get out there, it's a rainy, gray, miserable day. And suddenly, I fortunately didn't take care of ordering the crane, not that I would have done better, but the crane tried to lift the roof and they sent the wrong crane, and so it came off the ground. So consequently, I have this beautiful clear sky day picture the next day when they sent the right crane. And basically, after all this energy of a year plus work of the stone walls and the roof structure, it took 12 minutes to put the roof on structure on the house. So that's been my sort of basis of thinking. I know how to spend money with the best of them, and I do spend money, but always carefully and thoughtfully. It's never something that you should abuse. A client that started with a little backyard addition, evolved and evolved. This is like the project number 8 for that client. It's a mud adobe house. And they were from New Mexico, and they thought it'd be wonderful to have a mud adobe house. They bought a lot at the end of a cul-de-sac in West Phoenix. And it was the center point of that cul-de-sac that you see at the left of the first image, that this house, this courtyard house, would evolve. And there you can see again the expression of materials, thinking and rethinking how every move makes the ordinary become, hopefully, aspires to the extraordinary. And that's sort of an aspiration I've always had. The broken block house. Again, I got in this weird thing that it was interesting, and again, a lot of my clients didn't have budgets at all. And so suddenly I got the idea that wouldn't it be just simple, why don't we just get a bunch of broken block and assemble them and sandblast that configuration. And again, they were wanting a stone house in the desert. This is in Cave Creek as well. And the random pattern of those broken block laid just by regular masons. And it was, but they didn't have to think about being precise and precision. So again, the effect was there in the broken block house. First commercial work starts, suddenly somebody, you bump into a circumstance and something's there. This is one of my first commercial buildings. It's the J.L. Bamerlin Postal Credit Union. Those are 17-inch thick burnt adobe walls, and that's Core 10. That was probably the first use of Core 10 in Arizona. And on the middle image is a office corporate headquarters, small building again for Carver air conditioning. And they were a sheet metal worker. They put up a Butler building, and they decided they needed some office space. And so this became the office space on the front of a Butler building on Washington Street in Phoenix, Arizona. And on the right, I do car washes, and I say that proudly, okay? I had another client, Jerry Weiss, come, and he was sort of caught up in the whole energy of it. And he said, would you be willing to do a car wash? And that's after Central Library had happened and a whole bunch of things. And it's a project, it's a building, it's an opportunity, it's somebody with the vision and the courage to go somewhere. And so on the right, you see on a simple diagram of 2 cantilevered weathered steel beams and a rolled conveyor belt cover assembly, not unlike what you see in the office building there. It's a car wash. It's the Weiss Cars car wash up on Glendale, just west of the freeway in Phoenix. I put together a proposal. I was very interested very early on in doing public work, because the public realm is something that an architect really has something to contribute to the community in the larger sense. So the little library on the left was basically it was about a $100 square foot budget. It was a 10,000 square foot branch library in Paradise Valley. And so this whole series of public buildings has evolved since then. But it was just, again, it's a homage, all too blatant, to Taliesin West. Again, Wright was on my mind. It never worked directly there, but connected with those feelings and thoughts. And then we have the Phoenix Day School for the Deaf, a gymnasium, and a theater, next images. So very simple, very low budget, but again, budget should never be your excuse not to do architecture. Never let the budget isn't big enough, this is what you get. What you should always give is what you can optimally give, respecting the budget, because you got to, it won't get built if it's not. But again, small or large, always push yourself to an edge. Where it came from in my mind, I don't know. I had some very special mentors, but somehow, early on in my development, I got this inkling, and with my maverick background, where would it come up with? But I was going to get a Rome Prize and go to the American Academy in Rome when I could. And so literally the day that I was sort of eligible for that possibility, I sent off my little portfolio. I was going to do this big elaborate portfolio. It ended up going in a little 3-ring binder. Because I said I was going to do it, I did it. It wasn't the fancy binder I might have dreamed of. And somehow they looked through that portfolio and my proposal of work that I had done, And I ended up spending 6 months, and that was my studio right over the central gate there on the top floor. And you see the view there, and that was my view from that. In 6 months, I gave myself the privilege of expanding myself to a place I'd never been. There was a very deep agenda and impact of the work of Carlos Scarpa, of course. But again, a turning point. I sort of look at my life as being pre-Rome and post-Rome. And I mean that with important sincerity. This is an earthen dam. This is the Deer Valley Rock Art Center. The petroglyphs on the left, there were 7,000 petroglyphs etched into the desert varnish on the mountain on the west side of the mountain. And where the earthen dam that was part of Corps of Engineers project would collide with the mountain is where the simple little geometry of a museum telling the story would happen. It's tilt-up concrete. You can see how the joint configuration is there. You come along the edge of it as you approach the site. You park your car. You go through this funnel-like form. You come out this serpentine path down to the rock art location at the south end of that. And that's the Deer Valley Rock Art Center. And again, tilt-up concrete, but the coating of those panels take on their unique quality, not only just because of the geometries that you see happening, but that coating is copper slag. So it's a waste material. I wanted rough texture. And literally, I was at that time, I think, possibly even teaching here, and I had a project with the students over near Superior, Arizona. I can remember driving by the copper slag from the smelters over there. And all of a sudden, like, you're thinking about this thing, you're trying to really make it of the land and the space. And again, this mountain is covered with these black varnished desert rocks where the petroglyphs are pecked through. So it seemed like the ideal circumstance to complement the situation was just to use this throwaway material on the face that was down in the casting beds. And this is thus the Deer Valley Rock Art Center. You're moving through space. The dam is on your right. The mountain and the petroglyphs are off to the left. You move through this little machine about light and thinking, and you come out the back side. You can see the wonderful texture that's left after you've lifted those panels off of the copper slag. This is a suite of projects in Jackson, Wyoming. Every project you do, it's surprising how it happens. You know, there's somebody talking, there's somebody, a happy client, suddenly Sunset Magazine's calling again, whoever's calling again. You're putting out a little bit of your own PR. Don't be afraid to talk about yourself, but have something to show for it. I mean, don't talk about yourself and have an empty sheet behind you. If you got something you're doing and you think it's worthy, you should be proud enough of it and committed enough to it to share it. Because again, your work should be doing the hard work of getting your next client. You know, happy clients, good solutions, budgets met. That should be the evolution. So suddenly I get a call for the first project was actually this library in the center. This was in Jackson, Wyoming. And suddenly they heard about a couple of my branch libraries. I became an interesting player, put together a portfolio, got selected for that. It turned out I stayed at the house of the Riddells, who were on the building committee for the library the first night and we hit it off real well. So the library happened, but then the Riddells were at a point in their evolution, and we're all excited about. First, we did a little house for them, so they're how to do a house. Then it became the Riddell office building on the left, and then we had this crazy whitewater rafting guy, and it was called Mad River White Rafting. And the whole spirit of the architecture and the energy that was happening around these buildings suddenly ended in the third image in this triptych, which is the launch quarters for the Mad River White Rafting Company. Then you sort of keep looking at things, and like I say, I've always been interested in the public realm, and not bashful about reaching out. And so the proposal came. It was the largest bonded project of the bonded series in Phoenix at the time. It was the Phoenix Central Library, and with a little studio of 5 people in that desert that you saw a picture of. Again, I presented a portfolio. went through the interview process, created a vision, talked about the potential, and that resulted in the Phoenix Central Library, which is 280,000 square feet. It was done for $97 a square foot when it was completed in the 90s. And so, again, it's pushing the max. No excuses about where things are at. The copper skin of the library, and again, the metaphor. A mesa from Monument Valley. It sits on the landscape above the freeway of Phoenix. It is copper clad because, again, what's a more precious material when you think about Arizona? It comes from this place, copper. And the technology, however, for this rusticated skin, the heavy roll texture, was rolled by grain elevator manufacturing techniques. So the same galvanized metal grain elevators that you see all around Arizona, I asked them, they never did it, but they were obviously not going to have a problem rolling copper. It's much softer, it's much easier to do. But the whole skin of this library is clad in grain elevator siding and press form truck siding in copper. The south side, and again, I guess I've always been thinking and dreaming and beyond and when and taking opportunity that's there. So I have this project suddenly, and who do I call to be my consulting engineering team? And you saw in the early projects, I've always respected my engineers and gone to the max. But I really respected the work of Ove Arup and Associates. From the Sydney Opera House to Center Pompidou, their name is attached with the great architects of our time to all those projects. So what can they say if you call them and ask them if they'd be interested in being on your team? It's a $28 million project, got Studio 6 people, but you've called. And they said yes. They said, but you don't have to get up so early, because I was making the phone call and they knew it was about 5 in the morning here to call England and their offices, right? They said, happy to tell you, we just opened an office in Los Angeles. Needless to say, I had a plane ticket on Southwest the next day, and I made my own case face-to-face with Peter Budd and the people in the LA office. And the result was several relationships, but Central Library, again, is seminal in who I am and who I have become. The south side was operable on computer program horizontal louvers for the south sun. The north side was a different aspect of sun control, so there's these sculptural fabric shade sails. It was a Cableton Segurity roof that spans across. And again, in the simple diagram of it, behind these copper facades on both the east and west, those are called the saddlebags of service. So all the building services, including things like the restrooms, the janitor's closets, all the mechanical rooms, live in these bulbous sides on the east and west elevation, feeding to the center of the plan. And there's this stainless steel canyon. These are stainless steel plates shingled down, much as Wright's house for the Usonian period were done, the Pawson House years ago. So there's these shingles of 4-foot by 12-foot stainless steel sheets overlapping in the canyon cut through the mesa. And these great cantilevered beams give you the identity of the main entry on Central and the main entry into the parking lot, which parks 408 cars. You come down this compression into the canyon, and inside the mesa is literally a canyon that you are looking up to. You come down, there's light on your left side, there's this Venetian plaster on the right, just like Scarpa would have used. And this is looking down from the Crystal Canyon into the entry with 3 glass elevators rising from a reflecting pool in the center. And again, I knew what the budget was. I knew it was less than $100 to meet all the needs. And you just put all the people and the things into play, and it becomes that evolution. And again, I'd be kidding to say I'm always stimulated by things past and things present. So that's Le Brust on the left. That's the Bibliothèque Nationale, of course, a library by coincidence. That was the major inspiration. And the assignment I gave to Ove Arup, who I had not worked with before doing this library, was what I want to have us do is there's going to be a great reading room at the top. And my goal is to make the roof float on light. And we're going to do that, gentlemen, is we're going to put a 8-inch skylight on the east and west perimeter. So there's a continuous 300-foot long skylight, and over every column in the space will be a skylight, a 7-foot round skylight. So that became the sort of the goals or the aspirations of the project, and then working with them very closely and them having all the resources to know what that could become. Suddenly this room grew up for us. And it's pretty special. Because there you can see this is at solar noon. So you can see the light is coming down the west wall, which is on the left of this image up there, your left. And as it kisses the floor on the left, it starts climbing the wall on the right. So at solar noon, which is about 12:28, 32, something like that, as the solar noon is there, both walls are symmetrically bathed in light. And the tip of each skylight, there's a adjustment in the 7-foot lens of translucent blue glass, which is one 7-inch clear dot that puts a focus and a dagger of light on the tip of every candle in the space. And there you can see the 7-foot diameter. You can see the asymmetry of that little 7-inch polka dot of clear sky. Again, this harkening back to structures old in Mesoamerica, whatever, very interested in ruins and what they were before they were ruins. So again, the inspiration of this pyramid, this structure in Mesoamerica. Again, the skylight. And what you see there, that's still to this day, 20 plus years, 25 plus years since it's finished. If you are looking for something to do on a solstice, which is the 21st of June this year, and you just want to drive up the road, you'll see that room with all those people in it. That wasn't an opening shot that they came for the first opening, and that was cool. That was on the summer solstice. I forget exactly the date, but 20-some years ago. But again, architecture has this ability to inform who we are, what our communities are about, where their pride is. Architecture is a powerful, powerful art form. But it's about listening and responsibility as well as imagination and pushing it. And it's not about having all the money in the world, $97 a foot. You know? You can't make that excuse, well, next time when I have a real budget, when I really get one of Will's budgets, well, hopefully you'll get some of my budgets. Again, light's always a fascination with me. This is Temple Kolami. This is a little study model of the first concept through the classroom wings. So it's this whole dance of these butterfly roofs. And it's just 2 masonry walls on either side, concrete block. And as you go down, they tilt south, they tilt north. And then at the juncture where you enter are the sanctuary as you enter the. And again, ordinary block. Somehow I always enjoy going to a block yard. And there's something magical depending on the time of day that you go to the block yard. But that's me on the left. It's already at the job site, but those are the pallets that I saw in the block yard. And at high noon, they had this whole staggered effect that you see on the left. And it's just the randomness of how nobody was setting that. There was no dimension to it. But it's something, I'm always looking for those things. I'm always watching those things. I mean, I saw things this morning that I had never seen that somehow will come into some play in the next, tomorrow or a year from now. But so we have the tradition of a synagogue. That's the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem on the right image. So you can see where my inspirations come from. The most ordinary and simple to some of the most memorable and extraordinary. And always looking everywhere for ideas. Here is our leaning wall. Again, with a very tight budget. It's a very orthogonal, very simple construction of just simple TJIs. But the facade that's the east-facing facade, which is where the sun rises from, leans and is curved. So you have that one leaning wall, everything else is straight up with this random pattern. And that wall is laid very precisely with no offsets in it. And then on the east-west and the walls on the village going back, and then you can see through this clear story light how the sun comes into the sanctuary. So very simple tools. This was probably built at the time for $60-some a foot. I like houses. Houses are great projects for you to experiment with, to play with. You have interesting clients, they have the excitement, they have stories to tell, lives to live, and so this is the Hill Shepherd residence. Again, these are low-budget buildings. So as you drive by it on the street, it is just a suburban street up near Squaw Peak in Phoenix, and you'll drive by the house and probably miss it. But this is the house you see. It's a courtyard house, and along the northern edge of it is this canyon entry. So as you come around the corner just to the right of that garage door, there's a gate, and you turn and you see this progression of space. Weeping mortar, again, just letting the meter joints weep. Shadows are really profound. And this beautiful, all the stone was quarried from the site while we were doing the excavation, and they designed this there to go. They're all 612 rise to run. So you walk up at a total gentle cadence. You're not working to go up those stairs. The rise, the vertical dimension to the horizontal of a stair is a powerful tool for all of you to use as you develop your architecture. And you move up and you can see how the railing's suddenly there, and they just, there's the geometry of it. Don't be afraid of geometry. This is, again, a series of complementary angles. There you can see Linda coming home, walking up the pathway. And then this pocket of the bright yellow plaster. And this is the view from the master bed in the center. View across the living room on the left. And up in the top of that element, that is looking back at Piostowa Peak, or Squaw Peak as it used to be known. And that's the little perch up at the top of the Hill Shepherd residence. Okay. Different ideas. They keep evolving. They keep changing. This is the Byrne residence. Again, you're seeing things that, oh, you showed us that, but where'd this come from? So suddenly this is a whole different geometry, and all the walls lean. They lean out and form, make these, again, organic canyons. Just ordinary concrete block, sandblasted, carefully. These are skilled craftsmen laying these buildings for me, but for, nickels on the dollar. So there's this house. It was interesting because you have an idea, you evolve it, you build models, you have renderings. Everything happens to scale very early on in my process. But it wasn't until all the scaffolding was down and I'm leaving the construction site one day that I looked back, and I hadn't consciously said, I'm going to make the house exactly match the profile of the geology beyond. And it was a very happy day when I saw the scaffold down and I looked and, oh my God, what have I done? So I guess it was there in my mind, but it just wasn't a first goal. When I put the first thing down, it wasn't that, gee whiz, this is an opportunity. But it's sure a nice coincidence, and I'll take credit for the coincidence. Again, here you can see how it rises out of the ground. Again, light's always something that I'm looking for, grabbing for, thin edges. There you have the roof deck actually forming a crenellated edge that's forming the overhang of the house. And there's a 4-inch skylight between that roof and that leaning wall, the full length along that, which again is seasonally and daily a real treat. Again, different houses in different places, and I do know how to spend money with the best of them. And this is a house on the East Coast, the top one. That's the Horn residence. That's a continuous bench that is resin. That was actually, the resin came from Arizona, or the fabrication of it did, but a stone house with 0 joints, with barely see the grout. This is the Riddell residence up in Wyoming. And this is a house overlooking San Francisco Bay on the right. And then all of a sudden, multiples became part of my opportunity. I had a client, and they were interested, and they'd bought this little lot in Scottsdale, and it was a developer, and the developer likes to make money and wants to optimize the use of land. And the question was, how many units can we get on this little lot? And somehow I put this little collection together of these parallel masonry lines little tilt of the 45-degree facade that you see on the left, that every one of the units has the idealized view and the perfect view of Camelback Mountain. And you enter along the south side with this expression again of the units. Again, extremely budget conscious, always is, and these are views of the entry. And that was a fortuitous project because the person that bought unit number 1 is Louise Roman, who was a friend at the time and recently widowed, and she's sitting back about 4 rows here tonight. So it's been a good life for the last 20 plus years. Always a good life. But this is our living room and the view that you get to of the mountain and the entry down below. And you come up and there's the view of the Camelbacks through the glass there. The master bedroom is above the living room. And then there's this wonderful south-facing deck up on the top. I'm not afraid of color. I like color a lot. I like natural materials a lot. But this is a color called Pungently Optimistic Green. And it has a bite to it, okay? It leaves a good taste in your mouth. So the multiples then evolved into more multiples after that. Interesting Canadian developer, and suddenly we're doing 7 units. That became this project. That became this. Again, combination of zoning and live work. And all these things go through design review. They go through the most rigorous project process in our communities. They're concerned about design. Sometimes it's hard to wonder how that could be the case. This is the Compass House, the Dow Retreat. That's a sketch. It's the scale. You see a north arrow on it, and it's the scale. Even at the roughest sketch, why waste your time not drawing to scale and just making up things? Scale is going to determine if you're onto something or not onto something. And the sooner you get working in scale, the easier it's going to be for you and the better architecture I believe you're going to make. This is the Compass House. Gets its name because you can see where the north arrow is, and it's on the north-south axis of the staircase. That was on the construction site. There was existing parcel there. Here we're going up in the scissors lift with the owner who's going to build the house. That's the owners up in the bucket there. That's the model they're holding in their hand as they're up on the thing, and that's the views that we were trying to capture with that rotation of Compass House. There it's coming out of the ground. And I think we're moving to another location here. Yeah, this is Billings, Montana. Again, you do something and it forms a conversation. You have a happy client, you're happy, things are there, you've got things you're going to learn, always go learn, never going to do the same probably, but it's about learning, it's about growing, we're never going to do anything perfect, but it's just always trying to be perfect, always trying to reach to the beyond. So this is a site of a library, and the first thing is to really understand that little green star that you see in the aerial photo on the left, that's the site of this building. You can see this is in Montana, Billings, Montana. You can see what the topography is. You can see the orientation of the grid of the library in the city. So this becomes models. These are typical study and presentation models. You're thinking about that. All these models, what you're seeing, which maybe you don't recognize, but those are always people in those models. You never build a model without scale representation of people scale to males and females and children, but you populate because you got to get your head into starting to feel and understand what your architecture is going to be about for the people that will inhabit it. A rendering, it's a snowy place, and a built building on the right. The model, the steady model. See all the people? And this is the completed building. And again, I think it's LEED Platinum. So again, you don't have to ever not be doing sustainable buildings and using the excuse of budget or whatever. And again, it was interesting because that's weeping mortar, and I've always watched weeping mortar and used it. It's a very logical way to express my contemporary walls, because that's the building right next door. That's an old motel. This is coming into the library. The skin is a perforated box rib random decking because those are glass walls beyond it and the views are spectacular. That's entering at the first level, reflecting pool, the play of light and water and daylight and the manipulation of that. Light is a material that I hope you all will be intrigued with and have a passion for using. And this is the view up in the story cone. So this is I do these cone structures quite often in libraries for story time, and there you can see the kids at the bottom. And if they're looking straight up, what they're seeing is, again, the changing lights in this story cone. That is the story time of the Billings Library. This is coming up into the reading room. And you're looking through the front elevation there, and then on the left is a scrim, the box rib scrim. Both the left and right slide are those side perforated. And that's what you're seeing. Good fortune. I did this little remodel of the Scottsdale Museum of Contemporary Art out of an old fiveplex theater, and it had great success, and it was a fun building. And suddenly in your portfolio you have a museum. So somebody might call you, gee, I bet he can do a museum maybe, because you see one. Somehow that's a big leap for people. And you've got to set, as architects, position yourself that you're not just, I do houses. I do this, I do that. Let your work inspire the potential of what you want to do and what you feel you have to give to the community. So Reno called. It's a gambling town, and that is neon. They didn't really, architecture was a big word for them, but they were ready for it. And so that's the Nevada Museum of Art on the right. And again, this is how process, straight up with you. Again, I know you're going to do it on your keyboard, you're going to put things together, but the left image that you see there with the colored squares, that's the first thing I do after I program. That is the program, to scale. And I'm playing this little Ouija board game, putting all the parts of the puzzle together, right? In relationships, because I've got to understand all the relationships, and then you can't break the rules till you know what the rules are, and you can't, but that Ouija board, first sketch from that Ouija board is on the right. That's the sketch of the building I'm showing you. It has some similarity to what you're seeing in the building. But suddenly, it's the scale. There's a north arrow on it. I know where north is. I know that the site is twisted. That's the inspiration. The Black Rock Desert, which is about 30 miles north of the site in Nevada. That's the inspiration, and the architecture is in deference, in context, inspired by, and again, that's lead-coated copper skin. This one, and again, you're given gifts. You're given gifts. I'm not going to lie to you and say, when I did that design and did that little model and everything, I knew exactly where the sun rose and sunsets and how it was all going to go. And I knew I was going to get that picture in the middle there with those sun rings on my building. That was from the cheap glass in the developer building next to the building that's concave. And I was the happiest man in the world the day I came to the site the first time after the scaffold was down. I'm starting to look at my building like, where'd that come from? I looked over my shoulder and, it's all those cheap windows up in that shitty developer building. You can't plan for some of these things. And you can make up good stories afterwards, but it isn't about stories, it's about results. And here you can see all the random textures of the zinc. This is the interior of the building. It's around an atrium. This is moving up through it, and these again are inexpensive competitive buildings. These are the galleries. This is the upper main gallery, the corner window that you saw in the image a second ago. This was when we added the school. This is the opening party. This is a little school addition that happened. I've been working on this project now continuously for 20 years. And it's been finished in between, okay? It's been finished, but then they have another need. They got my phone number. Let's go for the next dance, right? So this is the little school addition we did. And again, this is very low budget architecture. And this is a room that happened on the top of our little geologic form. And That is on the grid of a lay-in tile ceiling, but why does it just have to be a lay-in tile ceiling? Zero waste, everything's random, broken pans. You can see it very effectively there over in the ceiling on the left. You can see how that ceiling's sort of working. It's all random. And I like randomness. I like the magic of randomness between the skin and the evolution. So that's how the building looked about 10 years ago, I guess, maybe. And then what happens? We just bought the rest of the block. You ready to come back? What can we do with that block we just bought? So that became the first study model of, so you see the building you've been looking at, and then beyond is the volumetric of the addition. There it is. That's a model, but it's the scale. And it's going to the property lines. Those are the houses that were on the site that they acquired. And suddenly I have a new opportunity for a material language because I've got a tight budget, and yet I want a black expansion of this black building, obviously, right? And so these are Endicott brick tiles. And I got the whole array of sizes and surface textures, and some are backed. That one row that's got those little stripes in it going down right down the middle of the side, that's the back of the tiles. And so the whole idea was they're replacing it. That's my main tile setter. And I'm taking the picture at the right because I'm there as we're making the sample. So it's not giving him a drawing and saying, I'll come back, just go for it, right? You got to live your dreams. You can't, be disappointed when things go awry. Peter Poole's the gentleman, the dark blue shirt there, been on the whole journey from the beginning. And that's our neighbor that used to be next to the building before we did the expansion. So that's the happy client you want. That's the board you want. That's the director of the museum with the long dark hair. That's Peter Poole, who has become a lifelong friend, and a bunch of other people from the board. And this is a high-tech sketch by Will Bruder circa a couple years ago. I'm really into the computer. I really, I'm into scale. I'm into working with it, but that's how ideas generate. There's all kinds of factors always playing in there. They're just not affectations. So there you can see the before on the left and what the after will bring to it on the right. Again, sketch. Yes, the working drawings. I have people that really know what to do with a computer, and I can point in good directions. And this is talking about photovoltaics on the roof, study model, and sexy digital rendering with that new skin that you're seeing there on our new extension. Again, which one is the first and which is the second, so that rendering comes after that sketch. But those little red things are people. First sketch, people to scale. Design sketch. And then renderings are interesting and wonderful. There's up in our new roof deck. Again, still working with models, and Yarrow is still the best simulation for it to scale tree. So, two more left. This is the corner of 5th Avenue and Van Buren a couple of years ago, looking northwest in Phoenix, Arizona. That's the old Valley Bank down Van Buren there on the left. And these are two office buildings on the left and right. And if you drive by that site now, we're close to that being a reality. That's the first high-rise I've done. It's 28 stories. It's a residential apartment building on a plinth of parking. And so that's exciting to have happening. And with that, there's a bunch of other things, but I don't want to wear out my welcome. An architect must be insatiably curious and without complacency. Once you become complacent, please retire. Be both a poet and a pragmatist. You can't forget the poetry, but it's never going to happen if it's not got a pragmatic support of the... Remember that architecture happens because of the client, not in spite of the client. The client is our gateway ticket, be it private residential homeowner, be it community, be it whatever. Architecture can't happen without respect for the client and what the client's trying to do. Never ignore the power of place, both natural and man-made. Draw from it, build upon it, relate to it, reach beyond it. Learn from the past, but live in the future. Design from the outside in and the inside out. The inside out or the outside in, they need to be seamless. Master an understanding of proportion and scale. That's something that's not going to up your budget, your cost. You're not going to go over budget, but proportion and scale in every move you make, from detail to big idea to context, proportion and scale. And they're very important, and too much of what we see around ourselves in every community, be it Tucson, be it Phoenix, be it Portland, be it the world. If buildings, the architecture always addresses and celebrates proportion and scale. Learn to live in your architectural concepts. Don't just draw ideas and say, this would be interesting, this would be fun, I'm going to try this. From the beginning, as an architect, you want to live, because you're never going to get a good result if you're not living in that work. From the first time you put a pencil down or do the first digital representation. Realize perfection is impossible, but be bold enough to keep reaching for it. Be both passionate and compassionate. Two different words, two different intentions, but they are linked there with the word passionate. Be a leader, not a survivor. Always show up. Create architecture to enhance community. Be a great listener and enjoy the music of life. So thank you very much for coming to this presentation, and I wish you great luck in your future. And it's never about a sunset, they're beautiful. It's always about sunrise, because it's about tomorrow and what will happen tomorrow. So don't run a life of sunsets. Always get up and greet the sunrise. So.